We won't spend too long on the old stuff, but just going right back, what was it about windsurfing that why did you decide to take up windsurfing in the first place?
Well, I was brought up on yachts, and I figured out pretty quickly that if I wanted to do anything that wasn't sailing, I wasn't going to get support. And so I learned to sail the family tender, and then progressed on to sailing and racing centerboard dinghies. And so when I saw my first windsurfer, I thought, gosh, here's the bare necessities to go sailing. You don't need a shackle key. I hated shackle keys, and I hated those sprags on the wires, the side stays, and and I hated being wet and getting an itchy ass sitting on the side of a boat. And windsurfing just seemed to solve all of that. And I lived up quite a steep hill, and so I had to take my boat down this very steep hill on to go sailing, and I was able to take my windsurfing equipment down the steep hill on roller skates, which was pretty exciting at the bottom.
And what
So,
what equipment was that, Bruce, back in those?
good question. Well, right in the very beginning, the first time I tried windsurfing, I was in Fiji, and I couldn't do it. I was too small and too light. And then the next year, when I was 14, I happened to be away on the yacht over the Christmas break, and I we went into a bay and down in Tauranga, and there's a windsurfing school, and I was so keen to give it a go. And the instructor said, "Oh, you know how to sail? Well, look, this will be very simple for you." And admittedly, it was perfect condition. It was flat water, light wind, and the equipment was pretty good. And he said, "Look, your front hand's your side stays, your back hand's your main sheet, and you steer it by letting it front or to the back, and you'd sort of twist it with your feet, and away you go." And I literally hopped on the board, pulled up the sail, sailed all around the bay, and took it back without falling in. And that was my first experience, and I was hooked. And then after that, I'd go down to the beach after school, and I'd budge rides off people, and that's where I did a lot of windsurfing. And I guess my mum got embarrassed from me doing that, and or saw my um, strong desire to go windsurfing and go faster than I would on a little sailing boat. And she bought the family a Superstar, which was a board very similar to a windsurfer, and but made of fiberglass and made in New Zealand, and it was a great board and turned out to be the model of board I sailed all the way from Auckland down to Tauranga when I was 17.
Oh,
And so I spent a lot of time on that board, and that turned also into the board that New Zealand used for the Olympic trials to go to the Olympic Games. So
okay,
it all
okay.
worked out well for me.
Yeah. So at that point, were you actually just free sailing, Bruce, or were you actually involved in any racing at that point?
Yeah, I think my first race was a race from a beach in Auckland, St Heliers. We windsurfed across to Rangitoto, which is a volcano in the middle of the Auckland Harbour, and ran up to the top, ran back down, and windsurfed back to St Heliers and won $200. And that was the first windsurfing race I ever did. I
Yeah.
was fortunate. I think that all the top windsurfers at the time were not in Auckland. They were down country competing in a proper event. But I sailed that board in every race that I could go. So a lot of the events I sailed in, there weren't other windsurfers. There, I was sailing against lasers and
Oh,
other
yeah.
boats. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I raced everything I could.
Yeah. Yeah. So then that was obviously back in New Zealand. What happened was it that then the windsurfer got selected for the trial?
Yes, there was a game changer when the windsurfer got selected for the '84 Olympic Games. At that stage, um, Yachting New Zealand went, right, we better send somebody to the pre-Olympic regatta in Los Angeles to qualify the class. And basically, that meant that somebody had to finish in the top 10 at the pre-Olympic regatta or World Championships to show that a New Zealand windsurfer had the capability of winning a medal at the Olympic Games. And so Grant Beck and I, he is 10 years older than me, went to Los Angeles for the pre-Olympic regatta, and we sailed on wind gliders. And then directly after that event, there was the windsurfer class Northwestern Hemispheres um, in San Diego. And Grant and I went down to that event, and it was sponsored by Myers Rum. And I got to say, that was a lot more fun than the wind glider event. And then after that, we still didn't know, and we actually didn't know until really just before the Olympic Games, whether we'd be racing on the wind glider, which was predominantly a European board, or the windsurfer, which was really strong in America and
Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah.
And so we competed on both. And so in '83, I went to the windsurfer class world championships in Canada, and I think from memory we had about 800 competitors. It was the
What?
biggest windsurfer world championships ever in history.
Oh,
And in the marathon, I got it was the start line was like a kilometer long. We had I think 4 boats along the start line. I think to get the start away took 1 or 2 hours. Lots of general recalls. I remember I got a rubbish start, but I ended up finishing fourth overall and third lightweight, and that was a real buzz for me. After the windsurfer class world championships in Canada, I was I really got good relationships with a lot of the Australian windsurfers, and I got invited to go to Australia and by Greg Hyde, and I competed in the windsurfer class championships in Australia a couple of times, and I established some pretty good friendships. And I've got to say, back in the day, Scotty O'Connor, those days, I idolized Scotty. He was leading edge of the sport, and I'm thrilled to say that we're still good friends, and I really enjoyed the interview that you did with him and
oh,
everything.
fantastic.
And
Yeah.
at the
Thank you.
time, Scotty was leading the charge with foot straps on boards and short boards in the waves, and that really was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I was longboard racing, so anyway, after that World Championships in '84, um, they had the windsurfer class World Championships in Fremantle, and all the Australians said, "Look, you better come over, and you can sleep on our balcony. You'll be fine." So that's pretty much what happened, and I was really, really excited to do the marathon. And right before the marathon, my mechanical universal broke, and so I
Oh,
couldn't do the race. And that's
oh,
actually was the main event that I wanted to do. I wasn't so interested in course racing, to be honest. Anyway, so I had to leave it there. And then, of course, recently, we had the windsurfer class world championships in Western Australia,
yeah.
and I was invited by all my Australian mates that I haven't seen for sort of 30, 40 years. And I just had to go. And I
Yeah.
was very fortunate that Mike Kilda from Western
Yeah.
Australia
Yeah.
really assisted me a lot in going there. I can't say how much. And here's a young New Zealand sailor that I coached on the RSX back in the day. So it was pretty neat to reconnect with Mike.
Yeah.
And Lars Klepich said to me
Yeah.
before I went, he said, "Look, I'll give you a tip. You better go sailing before you come to the World Championships, otherwise you'll get blisters."
Uh,
So I was very fortunate that Claudio Barbaza, uh, he's an Italian from close to Rome, and he's living in Hamilton now. And he had a couple of boards, so we went training, I think, 4 times before the World Championships, and every day it was windy. It was
yeah.
over 25 knots. And so I learned to sail in flat water and strong wind, which is what I knew we'd probably get in Fremantle.
Yeah.
And so when I arrived in Western Australia, and I just showed up with and got my rental board from Lars, and I waited for Lars to finish work for the day so that I could go training with Lars like old times.
Yeah.
And he warned me that he'd gone through all the equipment and he'd found a fast board and he'd found a fast rig and all the rest of it. Um, and we lined up, and I was just as fast, if not faster than him.
God.
And it was so exciting. And I've got to say that for me, that really cemented for me what an amazing class this is, and what a fantastic job Bruce Wiley and Ricardo Giordano and Greg Johns did with reigniting the class and producing really good one design, equal performance equipment.